Welcome, everyone. I'm Glenn James, the winemaker making Pandora's Amphora. Thank you indeed for purchasing a quite an interesting lineup of our older wines, the 13, 14 and 15 Pandora's Amphora, both unusually from 3 different regions. Let me start a bit of background. Why Pandora's Amphora? Well, I was told when I was making the first Pandora in 2011 from Heathcote fruit that Pandora didn't have a box, but it was an amphora, as you would imagine. And Pandora was a very interesting creature in Greek mythology. She was the first female created by the gods of Olympus. But with a bit of a lot of baggage. She was a curse to mankind in disguise, and I guess this wine has done a few things in the past with me that lives true to that. My background as a winemaker, I've been making wine corporately up to making Pandora in 2011 for the first time, at the top of the tree in the corporate world of winemaking. But it happened very quickly. I was at the corporate headquarters in the Barossa, and a winemaker who I greatly respect and is a friend to this day is Kevin McCarthy, who represented the very first blend of Claudius wine from T. Gallant in Mornington Peninsula. He had made on the side quietly, as part of our same company corporately, a wine that had been made, a white wine aged on skins in tank for some time and then pressed off. And I was very intrigued by it, and it got me thinking quite a bit. And as a group winemaker in a large company traveling around Australia, I'd seen a lot of winemaking, but never really come across white wine made as a red wine with the skins and seeds present. Usually white wine is just purely the juice extracted very quickly after harvest. So it set me on a bit of a journey, I must say. And then the launch of Claudius, I actually went to Kevin's winery down in the Mornington and it lent him an amphora that had been sitting at the Penfolds, Barossa Penfolds Saladora Nurutba in the Barossa Valley, South Australia, that had been sitting there for decades. And I took it to Mornington with me to have on at the launch of Claudius. And then I started thinking, well, why not make a wine in this old thing? And I tracked down the history. It is the first amphora that I made the wine in was most likely 300 to 400 years old, from Madrid in Spain, which has a very ancient amphora winemaking history. An amphora being a clay pot above ground, used by the Greeks and Romans to store oil or wine. So it's a very ancient form of winemaking. Making wine in clay does go back a long time. Georgia and other areas around the Black Sea in Far East Europe, we know they were making wine. They celebrate their 8,000th vintage. We do know that amphora wines were being made 3,000 years ago, but those amphora around the Black Sea were buried underground and called qvevri. And I did go to Georgia in 2013 to have a look at the winemaking in amphora, both red and white wine, and stayed at a winery to see just how they were doing it. And I was very pleased to see that that my intuition was very much similar to theirs. When you make wine in this way, it is the fruit is harvested, handpicked, simply destemmed and placed into the amphora with all the skins, the juice, and the seeds present. it is allowed to ferment by from the yeast from the vineyard, and once the fermentation has gone through, it's topped up and sealed off to ensure that it's an inert environment and keeping the wine sound. And how long it stays on those skins is up to the person making the wine. And I've been, it has varied and got probably a little bit longer as I've gone on with making Pandora since 2011. So it's around the 200 to 250 days on skins without sulfur. I occasionally plunge the wine, bringing up the yeast that's on the bottom of the amphora back up just to absorb any oxygen that may be getting into the container. The current vessel that I have used since 2013 is an amphora I designed and got made in Adelaide, and it's still the same amphora today. Pandora's amphora is only made in one amphora, so it's limited to just that volume. It's around a 600 litre or 700 litre amphora. I don't exactly know the exact volume, but when I do press it out by hand at the 200, 250 day time, we get basically 500 litres out of off the skins when we do a little basket press run. What's it made out of? Pandora has always tried to be 3 varieties picked on the same day from the same vineyard. That's how it initially started out. The 2013 wine, which was the 3rd wine made in the range, is the last wine made from the Chalmers Heathcote vineyard in the northern Heathcote area in Victoria. Equal parts Fiano and Vermentino, with a smidgen, around 10% of a wonderful little-known Italian variety called Musket of Giallo, which is a very muscety variety, but the berries, no matter how ripe they are emerald green marbles, perfectly round, and add a gorgeous lift and aroma to the wine. Through life changes, the 2014, I changed the sourcing of the material, and in 2014 I was in McLaren Vale, and so I managed to source Fiano and Vermentino from McLaren Vale. I was because McLaren Vale is a very good hotspot for alternate varieties. So I was able to get the Vermentino from Vigna Botten, who now have a great cellar door and restaurant in the heart of McLaren Vale. Oliver's Taranga, I'm a colleague of Karina Wright, and managed to get some of her Fiano. And I didn't manage, obviously, Muscat of Giallo is quite a rare variety in Australia. So I thought about, well, what should we do in terms of a muscat flavour, just to give that lift and character to the wine. And Karina said, oh, my grandfather planted Musket of Alexandria when he first planted the vineyard, and there's still some rows of it. So Karina and I went out and picked 5 or 6 buckets on the back of the ute and added that to the ferment. So again, all picked on the same day, but 3 different vineyards in McLaren Vale. With the 15 wine, again through life changes and meeting my wife, I moved to Alpine Victoria in northeast Victoria in Popunka, and she was very keen for me to continue on with the amphora journey. We managed again to find Vermentino, Fiano, and Muscat of Giallo from 3 separate vineyards on the same day. We harvested, drove around, harvested the fruit, and got into the very same amphora, which was obviously travelling with me. So what's it all about? Combining different varieties, extending their maceration on skins, extracting all the stuff out of the skins and seeds. Well, I think it is actually an expression, a true expression of the vineyard. When we rush in, extracting juice out of white grapes, we're in a hurry to take away the juice from the skins and the seeds to make fine, clean, aromatic wines. What we're leaving behind is what the vine has, all the effort the vine has put into producing all the compounds in the skins, and all the effort in producing its seed, its method of continuing its line evolutionary. And so soaking the wine with its alcohol from the ferment for an extended time, we're extracting all the compounds out of the skins and a lot of tannin from the seeds. So it's, I guess, what I'm saying is a fuller expression of what the vineyard gives you in a given variety, in a given year, in a given region. So they're quite full-bodied, full of tannin, and I let the ferments speak for themselves. It's the yeast from the vineyard, the wines, once pressed off, allowed to settle for a year on those lees still to again combine to soften those tannins we've extracted, and then carefully racked just the day before bottling and bottled without filtration. Now I've poured these wines and they have a light haze, and I've poured the wine again after mixing the bottle up, and it's the same haze. There's no actual sediment in the bottle. There's no crystals in the bottle. What's happened is that the tannins have stabilized the wine in terms of protein, like a red wine, and they've overwintered, so tartrate's dropped out. There's no added acid, there's no added anything, so there's actually no crystals forming in the tank. And so once racked, so what we have is look at another wine here, slightly hazy, and that's after mixing. And so it's a colloidal haze that stays in solution, so it's just a beautiful light haze, no horrible solids that may produce off flavors going down the line. I think that's what I want to say about how I make them. This is the first vertical I've ever done, going right back to the 2013. The 11 and 12 no longer exist, although I recently had an 11, when I say recently, in the last half year or so, in Sydney. A 2011 still on the pour at Fix St. James. And it was in absolutely gorgeous nick. It was just lovely to see. So yeah, we're going back here to an 8-year-old wine with the oldest to a 6-year-old wine, and there's obviously the year difference, but there's very much an intriguing look at the 3 different regions. Let's go to the oldest wine in the lineup, which is the best thing to do. It's the 2014. I'll just check my notes I took earlier today. 2013, the Heathcote wine, again, equal quantities of Vermentino and Fiano with about 10% or so of Muscat Giallo. And you'd say that that is a bright gold colour, but it is bright and lively. And on opening, and these, I must say, and the younger the wines, the more evolution they do, but they do evolve. They're very complex wines. They do evolve in the glass. It's like enjoying an older red wine, and that's how you've got to treat it. And aroma straight away hit you in your face. The wine is as an 8-year-old wine, and I had no idea how long these would live when I first made these wines. And this one's very much alive, and immediately hit with this pleasant grilled hazelnut, orange peel, some caramel, some clotted cream, vanilla nuance, because these 3 wines were made in an old puncheon, which actually I've moved away from now, as an evolution of the style, which as you creating something you're always trying to do. But these were in an old 500-litre puncheon, so amazingly, the wine, the puncheon was, nearly 20 years old. So you still pick up a bit of vanilla from that. On the palate, there is certainly a gorgeous mouth coating, not oily, but a wax mouth coating aspect in the mouth. There's that grilled nut character. And because they're quite low acid wines, there's no acid added. Heathcote's a warm region. What's holding that wine together? It's just like a red wine. It is the tannin extract, and it gives the wine a backbone to move along through your back of your palate, all the way through the back of your palate. And the tannins are soft, they give length, they're not nudging into the wine at all. And so you have that mouth coating aspect as well as that soft, gentle tannin extraction. There's certainly an alcohol warmth to this wine. It is 14% alcohol. Heathcote is a warm region, it was a warm year, and it was a long way from me at the time. I drove up there and collected the fruit myself on the back of a hired truck and drove them back to South Australia. And so the fruit is beautifully ripe and very expressive. It's a big wine, there's no doubt about it, but it has aged beautifully. The flavours now are all secondary, and the tannins give a slight, lovely, clean finish, slightly drying, a slight firmness, but it's all in balance. And you'd have to say, being an 8-year-old wine, it's at peak drinking now, and it's time to open it. And it's lovely. I haven't opened that wine for a long, long time. I'm very pleased the way that turned out. And just as a byline, people would know that we've had, in our region, in Alpine Victoria, had a lot of bushfire problems in the 2020 vintage. And we returned, in order to keep on making Pandora, we returned to Heathcote Vineyard in 2020 to make that same mix of wines, which is about to be bottled. Let's move on to wine number 2 in the lineup, the middle wine, which is the 2014. And I talked about that before, being McLaren Vale fruit with the 3 different, or 2 different vineyards, Vineyard Botten and Oliver's Teranga, with some really good family history there with Musket of Alexandria, which is the old, well, it used to be called Gordo, but Muscat of Alexandria is a more gorgeous name. Very ancient variety. It has a very similar profile to Moscato, but I guess a bit more upfront and less restraint in the musket thing. But it was just about, I think it was about 5 or 6 buckets that we picked that afternoon. This is much, you'd say it's golden, but there's arguably a khaki. Looking in the sunshine yesterday at the wine, it's definitely got, it's not green, but it's a khaki colour, which is almost like a fortified description of a white port. It's quite different to the previous wine. It's certainly fresh. It's layered, but it's quite perfumed. It has a sandalwood character. It's cardamom. There's a cooling aspect, and hence saying sandalwood and cardamom, those cooling notes with preserved peel. It's quite intriguing. A real sweetness to the nose. It's like an orange cream or a mandarin dessert. And this wine is very expansive on the palate. It's less tannins than the other wines in the lineup over the years. It's much more broader, and it's soft, and it's big, it's round in the mouth. Custard apple comes to mind. But yeah, again, that mouth coating aspect of very fine tannins and a mouth coating, weighty glycerol, yeasty creaminess to the wine. Still has those slight drying finish to clean things up at the end. And I guess this wine would be also at peak drinking now, being a 7-year-old wine. And it's the only a McLaren Vale wine in the Pandora history, which we're on to this year, our 11th vintage of the winemaking journey of Pandora. Looking at the fresher wine, the most recent wine, which is the 15. This is the first wine we made in Alpine Victoria, from vineyards in the Alpine Valleys. We did indeed, would you believe it, in that year found Vermentino, Fiano and Moscato Giallo to harvest on the same day. So it's quite an effort to go around the 3 vineyards and pick 700 kilos of fruit. But it's a thing one does after making wine for so long, and it's a joyous thing to gather the fruit and put it and tuck it into bed in that amphora and see what happens many years later. This wine is now 6 years old. It's not golden. It's a lovely yellow colour with a touch of green still to it. This wine's still got a fair way to go in terms of aging. And straight away, the spices dominate. There's it's herb and spice. So you get so we see dried tarragon, fennel seed on the nose. Again, that sandalwood and cardamom aspect, and right through the entire range, we'll keep seeing that clotted cream character, which is that age, that extension of aging on yeast lees. And again, a touch of the grilled nut coming into it. But yeah, and on the palate, it's very, very similar to that. It's all about herbs and spices. See those twiggy herbs like rosemary and thyme. It's very focused. It has being sourced from a much cooler region than either the inland heat of northern Heathcote or the maritime Mediterranean climate of McLaren Vale. Here we've got an area that's surrounded by mountains in valleys around that 350 metre altitude, sunny, long autumns, very cool nights. So we get much more acid retention in the fruit, and that's coming through on the wine. So it has a lovely mouth-watering effect with which you do get in wines. And you see these wines in Italy where you have that tannin and acid tension, and it's coming through. It causes that mouth-watering. So it's very focused. It has a savoury aspect of those herbs, preserved fruits, dried fruits, even sort of herbal tea aspects coming through at the end. They just linger. And that creamy aspect comes across as a white chocolate through the palate. So complex, layered, and this wine will open up over a few hours. And even younger wines, you can leave the bottle open for a week, and it evolves when they're much fresher and younger. But these wines are reaching at peak maturity or reaching maturity like this one. So what you do with these wines? What you drink them with? These wines have been very successful in restaurants around Australia. Chefs love pairing them with rich, fatty foods. They pair well with pork, braised meats, those sort of rich dishes, hard cheeses at the end of a meal as a end of a night drink, being mature, complex wines, cheesy dishes. And we've found recently also skin contact wines like these really go well with anything truffly, fresh truffles. I just love it. So I hope you enjoy these wines. We're still making them. The current range, we've just pressed off the 11th Pandora's Amphora, but we're selling at the moment the 2017 from the Alpine Valleys. There's a red partner, Pera, who was in fact the daughter of Pandora. That's made out of Saperavi in the Alpine Valleys. Again, treated exactly the same way, extended time on skins, brassic pressed off. And there's a little range of Friulano from northern Tasmania in the Tamar Valley done the same way, called Torian. And they retail for about, they retail at the moment for $60 a bottle. So that's basically it. So thank you for tuning in and watching, more importantly for taking the risk and purchasing these three very intriguing complex wines. Thank you.